Hello, Lee. Welcome to your
Hello,
call.
hello, David. Thank you for doing the technical stuff on the other end. I feel bad for even my other podcast because I've had to turn people into somewhat of engineers to make these calls happen. First and foremost, welcome everybody to your weekly distressed property coaching call, the COVID edition. My name is Lee Honish. I am joined as always by David Bartels. This call is sponsored by Home Loan Advocates. If you have a short sale and you need help, visit Home Loan Advocates online. We'll talk about it in a second. And Everhomes, state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology for real estate agents in California. I think I sound more coherent, David. I'm joined by David Bartels, the owner of Home Loan Advocates and Everhomes. David, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I like the new start time.
I do too. Gets everything done and out of the way. And since I'm currently
Oh,
doing as much research on life hacking as I can, um, works out better on the day. David, tell everybody about Home Loan Advocates and Everhome.
well, Home Loan Advocates is a short sale negotiation company, basically. And yes, we're still doing short sales and have been since as long as I can remember now. So if you need help with a short sale, we would certainly be a resource to help you. It probably doesn't even cost you anything because the bank pays our fee 72% of the time, and we handle all the dirty work. Everhome, which we officially launched on yesterday, September 1st, is basically a technology-based real estate company that allows sellers for the very first time to leverage technology to sell their house. Um, the same way that buyers have been using technology to buy a house since the invention of Zillow some 20 years ago. So anyway, that's what we're up to, and we're off to a great start. It's very exciting up here in our offices as we really roll this out hard now.
My name is Lee Honish. You can visit leehonish.com, Leehonish. Lots of programs, lots of content, lots of media. Currently working on the 30-day hack and doing research for anybody who wants to dramatically change their life in 30 days. I'm going to start rolling out the content shortly. I actually have the first round. I figured out how much time you need to dedicate to making something better. I've tested it out. I'm testing it out on me on a couple of things because I want it to be as wide variety as possible. But yes, it's a real honest to goodness life hack. So visit leehonish.com, fill out the form, let me know what you want to hack. It will certainly help me and I can start pointing you in the right direction. 100% free. Life hack will be 100% free. I will teach it. It'll have videos. It'll have audio. All of it will be 100% free. With that said, this call is our COVID edition of Distressed Properties because, well, let's be perfectly honest, David, people are in distress, both buyers and sellers and real estate agents and investors, probably not mortgage people because they keep refinancing everybody. So currently the sun is still high in the sky for them. Dramatically in California as of yesterday, they've now extended, let's do current topics, they've extended the COVID relief for tenants and for landlords. And you actually posted this as well. Have you got some insight and detail on that?
Well, I just know what I was reading, and that the well, there are two extensions. The federal government extended the eviction moratorium through the end of the year, and then the state of California extended it to January 31st of next year. And so if you are a renter and you are unable, or it's not clear if you how you prove you're unable or don't want to pay your rent, you cannot pay your rent and you cannot get evicted until January 31st. Now you still owe the money, and in California, you can be sued for the money, and they don't have to wait till next year to sue you. They can sue you now to collect the rent. but you cannot evict them until at least January 31st. And if they're paying you at least 25% of their rent that they owe, so if you have a $2,000 a month rental and you're paying at least $500 of that, they can't even sue you for the past rent. Now you still owe the money, but that you cannot be sued and you cannot be evicted. The problem is with the landlords is that the landlords don't have the protection. They're not getting, they still owe they still have to service the mortgages on those rental properties, assuming they have one. And there's been no relief really designed for that. The California legislature does not reconvene again until January, so there's not going to be any progress on that for landlords. And I think at the federal level, I think they're off for a month. So, to give you an idea, so it's good news for renters, it's bad news for landlords.
Excellent. Also in news, crime rates seem to be going up systematically in major metros. I'm just wondering if ultimately, from your perspective, we've seen a spike in homeless rates and we've seen a spike in crime and violent crimes. And I'm wondering, is this ultimately going to have effects on the major metros? Chicago's suffering from it, New York is, Los Angeles is as well. From your perspective, David, do you see any long-term impact from what's going on based on the economy and what's happening crime-wise?
Well, I fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately I live in a bubble that really doesn't really have, these situations that you're dealing with, in Agora Hills, Westlake Village, Thousand Oaks area. We're really blessed that the local economy is going well. We don't really have issues with crime and homelessness here. When I'm visiting other areas, which is a lot less than it used to be because of COVID, I do see some of that stuff. But I really just don't have a pulse on what the impact is. I know the public doesn't like it. And then there's obviously, like almost any issue that needs community to solve, there's a massive divide between what to do about it, whose problem is it, and what the impact is on residences, on housing. So I don't really know the answer to it. That's one of those things that may never get solved in a way that anybody really is happy with. But it is concerning. There are some issues, some long-term trends that I think that we have to do. I was thinking about businesses in general this morning when I was coming into the office, and I took a different route than I normally take coming into the office, and I saw a restaurant that I liked and that is now out of business. It was only open a year or two, and now all of a sudden it's completely out of business. And the thought that occurred to me about COVID and how COVID has impacted, because I had read something recently, and I may not have the numbers right, that there are 2 million businesses, or maybe it's more than that, but 2 million businesses that had closed due to COVID and are never going to reopen. And I had what might be a profound thought on the way, and it was this: that if a business was struggling, and being in business is not as easy as it looks, from being in business for myself for a long time. Being in business, if your business was struggling, then COVID really put an end to it. You went from weak to out of business. But if your business was thriving, your business is probably okay to good right now, and you can probably get in. And that seems to be the scale. So it seems to, COVID basically knocked business down, a notch or two. And in some cases, it pushed businesses over the ledge where they were just really making that effort on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis just to keep their head above water. And COVID really just ended any hope that they were going to be able to turn about. And the question is what's the number of people that were employed by those businesses, and are those people able to land in similar paying positions, or not? And that's what we don't really know. When you look at GDP growth, housing is really propping everything up. Housing is the real bright spot. I mean, my business was good, and now it's great as a result of COVID. Now it went to, oh no, we're going to go out of business, the first couple of months, to where now we're, thriving, having more transactions in escrow than we've ever had, before. So I don't know. Gosh, I'm rambling, I guess, but I don't really know what the answer to the crime and blight and homelessness, question is. And I'm sure that it's going to have a long-term impact, but it doesn't appear to be impacting housing sales, housing demand, housing values in the near term. They're all up.
Yeah, and I completely understand your perspective on that. Housing still remarkably is the bright spot, yet it seems to be one of the things that teeters. The one thing that is apparent, not getting into a deep philosophical debate about trickle-down economics, but when you talk about restaurants or businesses in general, they tend to have, it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, restaurants are easily one of the risky investments for small businesses. Self-employed people that, we talk about the 80% in real estate and the top 10 or 20% or whatever the crazy number is that you listen to this week in real estate. The bottom 80% are living vicariously off of referrals in real estate, and they literally had ripped from them the ability to be face-to-face and to be able to communicate with people that, they would have normally picked up their 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 listings in a year with. There's a lot to this, and at some point, I just keep feeling that there's got to be a trickle down of impact that this will all have. And I know it from the emails that I receive and the type of businesses that people are, trying to restart. I don't know how you do it. I do know that in San Diego County, we just rolled all the way back. We officially now can, places of worship, gyms,
Indoor,
and indoor restaurants. We get indoor restaurants back officially.
And face mask or no face mask?
Face masks. I mean, they still want social distancing. I mean, even on a program level, shout out to everybody in a 12-step group, I went to a meeting yesterday. I saw it for the first time. So it's coming back, but it's coming back slowly. And I don't know, when we get to a point of the government trying to subsidize all this, what is the impact on this, and what are we pushing off till tomorrow? This is the great debate of 2007, right? And I saw it with the banks when I was there. Let's just push it off until the economy corrects itself. If we keep pushing it off far enough, we'll be okay, right? That was the idea behind the original forbearance agreements or handing out loan modifications. We're just pushing it off. We know they're not going to pay. We know the default rate on loan modifications. People who don't pay, don't pay. Now we put people in a position where they owe 6 to 9 months worth of rent. I don't think it'll affect mortgages as much. I think the first round will show an impact, but I don't know how they're going to get around this renter thing, where people owe 6 to 9 months, and when this is all over, there's going to be a landlord going, okay, pay up or quit. There is a day coming, and I don't see any way around the day where this all comes to a head for the economy.
Well,
am I wrong for thinking that?
No, it's listen, lots of landlords are gonna just write it off. Lots of landlords are going to sue and get judgments. Lots of homeowners are going to have to explain why they have a judgment against them for unpaid rent, which is going to make it harder for them to get a new place. I think that you're going to, a lot of homeowners are going to file bankruptcy to avoid having to pay, those judgments. those things. So it's going to be interesting, really, what happens. But there's going to be a reshuffling, and I think that the way that it'll turn out is the same way that we grew out of short sales and foreclosures. And so when people, they ended up losing their house to foreclosure and stuff, and then they went and they had to go rent a house, and they just, they spun their story and say, well, yeah, this happened, I couldn't work, and but now I'm working, so I couldn't pay, and I lost my house, but now I'm working, and I'm doing great, and I can pay, and here's a couple extra months security deposit to prove it, and let's go, and they'll be able to get into a new place. So it's gonna be a lot like that, and you're gonna see the equivalent of two parties who aren't in their current rental right now because they couldn't pay, where they're and they're going to be replaced by somebody who didn't pay. So that, but they're going to have proof of income and not having the protection of going forward. So hopefully the people who aren't paying because they can't, and that's really what these laws are for, these statutes are for, is to protect the people who can't pay. And hopefully it's not from people who can pay but are just taking advantage of the system. And I find it interesting that both the California and the federal law, they say it's because they don't want to spread COVID, but it excludes people who make $100,000 or more. So if you make $100,000, you're not excluded from this, and you can be evicted.
Yeah, it's an interesting twist to the whole thing. And I guess the last social topic for the day, Biden's made it clear in his campaign that if COVID isn't under control by the time he comes into office, that he believes, based on what the CDC is still saying, which is second wave flu virus, that you still need a possible shutdown if he is to be elected. You've got one side that wants to open up as much as quick as possible to repair the economy as quick as possible. You have another side that's more focused on the welfare and the health of the United States. I can make an argument for either side on this topic. That's not my point. I'm just wondering, just so that we have a fair and even debate on the topic, we've discussed it many times. Don't do nothing while you're at home. Retrain yourself, do something. Learn a new skill, go online, find some other form of business. We've talked about that repeatedly here. You and I are both big fans of the concept of not just laying around. Which takes us to the other side. What would happen from your perspective if the CDC is still recommending a shutdown if Biden comes into office and he does a federal-wide, countrywide shutdown and rollback?
Well, I don't think that there's anything. I don't think anybody's going to do anything on a national level, except maybe travel restrictions, right? The only thing that you might see might be something where they just don't want people moving around, the country. And if you do, then, so I'm reluctant to get on an airplane right now. I've canceled a couple of prospective trips that I was going to take just because I didn't, want to jack with it. So, I don't know. I'm not really that good with the, some of these hypotheticals. I think it's really going to be on a state by state basis, not much on a federal level. I think that, the one thing that seems clear about a Democratic president versus a Republican president is that the Democrats seem to be, a lot more willing to pay for the pain, than the Republicans, do. And I think that's part of the problem. So I think that's really, the Democrats will throw money at it. I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. I'm just telling you my perspective of the positions, that the Democrats are more likely to provide aid than the Republicans are, which is also underscores why the Republicans are in a bigger hurry to get the economy opened as well. And, part of this is election stuff. So part of this is election rhetoric. Trump is, the one, for all the things that are going on, the one advantage Trump does have over Biden appears to be, the economy. So, Biden seems to be leading in, every single poll except the one that says Americans trust Trump more with the economy than than Biden. That's the one saving grace. And so it's really in the Republicans' best interest to get the economy open as quickly as possible, in spite of the consequences, I think, to a certain extent. And I think that's really, it's really just politics that are driving. And I think what Biden is saying is that he doesn't want it to be driven by politics. He wants it to be driven by science, by data, as opposed to motivated by the economy. I think everybody wants the economy to open up, and everybody wants to move past this, and we want to get to to growth again. And I think the inconsistency between states really doesn't help, but that's the way our system works. And for me, I'm just trying to stay as close to home and and wear a face mask and just try to stay safe for myself and my family and my friends, some of which are very vulnerable, and I couldn't live with myself if I got them sick. So it's for them that I try to be extra careful.
Yeah, I agree. And McKinsey agrees with you. She has declared that she is remote schooling, and if that doesn't work, there will be homeschooling.
Yeah.
It might help that her mother's a hypochondriac as well. But hey, I don't disagree with her.
Is hypochondria hereditary?
No, but I think it's a learned behavior for sure based on that.
Okay.
But I've had to, now that she just turned 16 a week ago. So it's she's a very different person these days to talk to. Hopefully she doesn't pick up any of my traits, and I'm okay with all of her mom's traits.
No, they'll things that benefit her from you. Yeah.
No, we will see. With all of that said, that covers all the grim prospecting news and hypotheticals and everything that's going on. I would recommend to everybody in real estate, go out and do research. Your clients are going to talk to you about it. We will move to a high note to end out this episode. But first and foremost, don't forget to visit Everhomes and Home Loan Advocates and leehonish.com. All right, let's move in a different direction. So I'm working on this life hack, David.
Okay.
And I want to get your perspective on this because agents are starting to come out of the woodwork, and I'm ready to get back at it. I'm ready to go. What do you got? That's great. That's great. My answer is, now that I have invested a lot of time into trying to figure out the social and or work or the requests I've seen go from, I want to eat better, I want to diet, I want a better body, you name it. I've seen it across the board in emails, and from real estate agents, it's where do I begin now that I need to start over? And my first answer to this is, are you prepared to dedicate 6 hours a day to improving your position and re-engineering your life? I based everything when I wrote the hack on the potato diet. I'm a firm believer in hard restarts when you're trying to go in a new direction, and I've done it many times, and I've kind of documented it online. We all know of my crazy exploits of wanting to cage fight or box or anything as a person over the age of 40 and well into my 50s with some of my exploits, and that's because I don't have the issue of going in a new direction. I was talking to a weightlifting friend, and I said, all right, if I really wanted like a body in 3 months, if I said, I don't want to be like you. I don't want muscles for days. I said, I just want to look fit and tight, because that's a question that comes up. I said, if I dedicated 6 hours a day, every day, would I get a body that I was after in about 3 months, right? Would I see results in 30 days? Could I actually hack this? He goes, yeah, if you dedicate 6 hours to anything, you're going to see a difference within 30 days, which is what people are after. So I would say this for real estate professionals. Are you prepared to start by, investing 6 hours a day? If I was setting you out today, David, in the current climate of your area, how would you dedicate 6 hours of your day to getting new business?
How would I dedicate 6 hours of my day to getting new business? Well, let me start by saying what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't go door knocking. I wouldn't send mailers. I wouldn't, I wouldn't post on Instagram. Those are, I wouldn't tweet. Those are not things that I would do that, to generate business. Now, there are two types of business when I think about that. You have your now business and you have tomorrow business. And well, to me, it's really all the same. And it really starts with a relationship. So the number one most important thing that I would do, this might come as a surprise to you, I would compile everybody I knew, everybody I
Shocking.
knew.
Hold on, let me insert shocking.
And I would put it in a database. Okay, I use Follow Up Boss. There's lots of less expensive ones out there. Even an Excel spreadsheet, a MailChimp account, something. And all I would do if I had one thing to do and 6 hours a day to do it, I would call everybody I know and say, hi, how you doing? I was thinking about you. I, was wondering, it's been a long time. I want to let you know, this is, what I'm doing, and, do you know anybody who, you know, who might be interested in buying or selling real estate and over the next few months. That's
Yeah,
what I would do all
I
day
agree.
long. Okay, that's the
Yeah,
number one most important thing that I would do. I'd start with my sphere of influence. Then I would sit down and I would probably write 6 emails, sequential emails. So if I were trying to tell my story, to people, that is a live transfer from sorry about that. My sales team, my inside sales team is generating 50 live transfers or appointments a week for us. 50. It's amazing. So anyway, so what I would do is then I would create some emails, some different versions of the same thing, and I would set them up where I sent them one email a month, tell them a little bit about me or tell them a little bit about real estate or something like that, and I would just schedule it to go out on a once a month basis to them. The next thing I
yeah.
would go
Oh
ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And then the next thing that I would probably do is that I would probably find a newsletter. I use Home Actions. I make no money for this. I use Home Actions, which is like $40 a month or something, and they prepare the whole email. They do it all for me, and they send it out on a once a month basis, unlimited number of people. And then I would monitor that information, and I would begin to categorize those people based on, who's a long-term prospect and who's a short time, what I call now or later. Now is they're likely to do a transaction or give me a referral in the next 90 days. And later means it's more of a nurture. They're not likely to do a transaction or give me a referral in the next 90 days. And those are the two categories that I would focus on. But that's where I would start right now. If I had 6 hours a day for a few days, I would start by organizing, and I would build, and I would spend all my days adding to my list through lots of other ways that we can talk about, in future calls.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, which generally leads to the follow-up call, which led to me writing a preamble to the 30-day hack with blind assumptions. and I would say this to everybody listening, there's a reason why the first thing Gordon Ramsay does is try the food before he fixes the restaurant. If your business is being a salesperson or your business is being a buyer, then it is on you to be I'm not even saying the best. How about just the most educated? And it's kind of disturbing to me that it's a longstanding thing with me and the education that is provided by the National Association. With no disrespect, they certified me for doing, training on short sales. But in general, it seems to be a little bit of everything all over the place. And in my experience, agents tend to go all over the place when they look at marketing or sales skill. So I'd like to hear your feedback on this. One of the things that I profess, especially with the 30-day hack, is you don't have to be an expert. I'm not even talking about you being a pro. Just educate yourself. Spend a day on YouTube. Spend a day on Vimeo. Spend a day Googling searching techniques on being a better buyer, being a better seller. Everybody is out there with videos. And certainly after COVID, I know this even about the very biggest trainers. They weren't able to do their live events, and all the big guys spend time shooting video. When it comes to education, David, how important is it to, I'm just taking, I'll go with a low qualifier, qualified to be a buying or a selling agent or a renter's agent or a commercial, just qualified. I'm not talking an expert, just solid that you can answer some questions. How important is it?
Well, first of all, nobody's hiring a salesperson. If you think about, I mean, this is really has to do with the tone of the communication that you have, with people. We talked about the sphere of influence, and the reality is there's not a single buyer or seller out there that's looking to hire a salesperson. What they're looking for is an expert. They want a listen. I know this from launching Everhome, is that 93% of buyers use the internet to find a home. 8% of sellers are using the internet to sell a home. Now, what's interesting about that information is that in 1981, I don't know how many, 15 years before the internet was invented, in 1981, 15% of sellers listed their house for sale by owner and 0% used the internet. So from 1981 to 2019, we went from 0% of buyers to 93% of buyers using the internet or technology to find a house. And we went from 15% of for sale by owners to 8% of for sale by owners. And we got all this incredible technology though. How does that happen? How do you get that inversion of data? And what we learned is that the number one reason sellers are more likely to use an agent 92% of the time versus 8% of the time for selling their house, the number one reason is they want help with the critical elements of the transaction, the negotiations, the paperwork, the escrow, the title, the disclosures, the contingency removals, the inspections. More importantly, they want help if things get sideways. So if a deal isn't going the right way, they're paying you to handle it. So having said that, and this is true on the buy side as well, having said that, you have to demonstrate a core competency that you're going to be able to properly and fully represent them in that transaction. And that means having at your core value a place of being confident and having the swagger of being able to educate them, explain, and guide them to a reasonable outcome. So to answer your question, if you don't have those basic skills, then you ought to be investing at least an hour a day acquiring those skills, or you need to be associated with somebody like me, who spends countless hours every week training salespeople, bringing up to speed for right now we're reading every paragraph of the buyer's agent agreement and explaining what it means and reading it with a highlighter. This is a course that we're going through. And sometimes in a 90-minute course, we get through 2 or 3 paragraphs talking about what it means. It's, so those kind of nuances are really important in A, establishing value and expertise to your clients, and B, giving you confidence to have a conversation and to give advice and to lead people to the right conclusion. So that's my perspective.
No, I agree. I agree completely, which brings us to the last thing, as this is a little bit of a jump off point positively for agents and anybody else related with the real estate industry, which is branding, right? Which is why we moved all of what we do into the term advocate, right? We are the homeowner's advocate. That is a branding and a message that gets around the stigma of being a realtor. Now, I'm not saying that you have to use it if you're listening to this randomly on a broadcast, but being an expert in a field, I just know this from looking at doctors. It doesn't take me being a rocket scientist to figure out that specialists do better than general practitioners. There's no way you can cover everything very well. From your perspective, David, how important was the branding for Everhomes or even for the distressed property group that we are with right now, being advocates? From your perspective, looking at the trends, how do you feel about branding?
Well, I think brand is important, but what your brand really should do is it should really represent who you are. Now, like for instance, so here's our new business card. I just got it yesterday. What do you think of that? Oh, you probably can't see it, Lee. But and here's the back. And so what we're trying to communicate is trust and value and progressive. And that's really what your brand, what does your brand say about you? Now, when we were doing the Everhome, I talked to people, what do you think about Everhome? What do you think about Everhome? We're thinking about using Everhome. And, some people loved it and some people didn't like it. And he said, well, what's Everhome mean? What's all that? And people were trying to deduce, what we were trying to communicate with the name Everhome. And my wife was one of them. We would have these discussions, on our walks. And what I explained to her, as I'll explain to you now, is that, the name means nothing. Whether or not you use your own personal name, it's how you brand it. So the name means nothing. What is your brand? What does your brand represent? Does your brand represent value? Does your brand represent high end? Does your brand represent integrity? Does your brand, what is it you want your brand to represent? And what you want it to represent, what you say it represents, has to be congruent with the way that you run your business. Because at the end of the day, the brand isn't what you say it is. The brand is what you do. The brand is how you run your business. Your brand is what other people perceive your brand to be, and that comes through relationships and reputation. So that's really what you gotta think about. You've got to demonstrate what your brand means. You can't just state what it is. And when you get a clean slate like I have with Everhome, I get to communicate what that brand means. But if we fail to support it with our actions, if our business model doesn't support it, then our brand will very quickly shift from what we want it to be to what it is, which is something different.
I would make the argument, thanks to COVID, and I just know this for my personal marketing and content business. I've used this time to allow separation in space because my brand up to this moment has been my marketing and content, and I get people more of what they want. That was the tagline. That's what I live by, and it was successful for me. But I want to move into, and I'm using the opportunity, and I put this out there for everybody listening. Take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of you. If you haven't been in front of clients, we've given you a way to do that. We've given you a time to put into it. We've explained to you how to be educated on it. We've explained the importance of branding for it. I know for me that moving forward, I'm rebranding it to I Hack Life. I'm looking for a conversation starter. Even when I came up with the line of I get people more of what they want, the conversation was a little more complex, but for me personally, when discussing branding, I Hack Life, it leaves a much wider door open to, at the end of the day, I'm still a marketer. If you tell me you want to hack weight loss, to me, it's just a marketing and coaching thing. It's based on science and what actually works. There's no different. Generally, I get businesses, and generally, it's lead sources that people want, or they want to be better at something. Those are all in line, and to use a Tony Robbins term, congruent to what I've been doing now for a decade. Coaching and educating people on specific fields uh, and teaching them better approaches. I'm just putting better branding to it, and I'm taking advantage of COVID. And I would say this to every agent out there. Okay, you haven't been around your people. Now's your chance. Now you can fresh slate it. Now you can change brokerages. We have to start looking at what's happening right now as not a negative. Instead, turn it into a positive. What can you do to change what happens next? And I can't believe those words came out of my mouth, David. From your perspective, you've taken the time and you've created a new company, and this is where you insert an Everhomes pitch.
Well, we're very excited about Everhome. In fact, we closed our first Everhome transaction. We got our first Everhome listing already. We got Everhome signs that are being planted where our Help You Sell signs used to be. It's really an exciting time for us. And I think that if I were to make a pitch to this audience is that we're looking for affiliate agents all over California, and primarily, if you haven't already sent me your information about where you are, we need, this is a referral type relationship where we will refer business to you, work on a referral fee basis, simply because we just can't cover everywhere, and we're really focused on our local market. If you're in the LA and Ventura County areas and you're looking for a new exciting opportunity, and you want to, with a public company that's with stock options and salary plus commissions, we've got different types of sales positions. One is all over the phone, where we're listing houses almost every day without ever leaving the house. And we've got our full service stuff that we're doing. Then you want to reach out to me, David at everhome.io. David at everhome.io. You can obviously call me too, 805-379-3300.
And the reason that we're all on this call is because we are homeowner advocates who work with distressed properties, especially during the COVID period. If you or a loved one needs some help with a short sale anywhere in the country, David, what do they do?
Well, 805-379-3300, 805-379-3300 is who you can call, or David at homeloanadvocates.com.
Simple as that. And if you want to find out about hacking your life, re-engineering, marketing, any of those lovely things, go to leehonish.com. It's a very simple website right now. While I figure out the direction of the next website, I'm a little indecisive on building websites. It's much like my latest hobby of watercoloring. I can't figure it quite out yet, but I'll spend time. I'll figure it out. We do this call each and every week, and for the next couple of months, and maybe indefinitely, if it works for our schedule, a little bit earlier so as not to burn up the day. We do the call live at 9 a.m. Anyone listening to this broadcast or watching the video, go to coachingcalls.info. I'm sure there's a link down below this video or this audio, or however you're receiving the information. If you're an existing coaching student, you have access to us always. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, 858-663-2537. Please send me a text. I respond much better to it. And ever since I put the anti-spam thing on my iPhone, I just don't get any calls, David. I don't know. The anti-spam thing by iPhone is just wrong. It just, every call gets sent directly to voicemail. So send me a text at 858-663-2537. That'll do it for this week. David, if you would hit the button.
button being hit.
Ah, and Venmo